اللهم صل على محمد طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأجساد وشفائها ونور الأبصار وجلائها وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم.
الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين. صدق الله العظيم. Brother Chairman, respected Imam, brothers and sisters here in Masjid Al-Ubudiyya in Shah Alam in Kuala Lumpur, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our topic tonight is not an easy one. So we pray to Allah for His help, for His guidance, and for His blessings as we attempt to address you on the subject, the Shia, the Sunni, and Akhirulzaman. A follow-up lecture to our previous lecture entitled The Sufi, the Salafi, and Akhirulzaman. These are challenging topics, and I'm happy that you are so interested, that you are here to listen to this topic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded in the Quran, commanded us, ba'ad a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, wa'atasimu bihablillahi jami'an wa la tafarraku. Hold on, all of you, hold on to the rope of Allah, which is most of all the Quran. Hold on to the rope of Allah and do not be disunited. وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. After that command in the Quran, it is going to be interesting to see what happens. Nabi Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam has accomplished his mission. He's finished his job. O people, he asks from Arafat, have I delivered the message? And they all proclaim, yes, you have. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down revelation. Al-yawma akmaltu lakum deenakum وَأَتْمَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعْمَتِي وَرَضِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا. And so the job is finished to perfection. And we are a united ummah. Will it survive? Will it survive? We know that Dajjal was released in the lifetime of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And we know that he is going to try every single trick in the book to try to break us up into bits and pieces, to disunite us. So let's see what's going to happen. Upon the death of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, the entire ummah united in accepting Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu as Amirul Mu'mineen and the leader, the entire ummah, with no exception, everybody accepted. And so there was no dissent, and there was no division, and there was only unity. Alhamdulillah. And so we are obeying Allah. وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And then when came the time for his successor, the entire ummah, with no exception, everybody accepted Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu as Amirul Mu'mineen and Khalifa. There was no dissent. There were no divisions. And so we remained a united ummah. Alhamdulillah. We are obeying the command, do not be disunited. And then came his successor. And Uthman Ghani radiallahu ta'ala anhu becomes the Amirul Mu'mineen and Khalifa. And again there is universal acceptance. Everybody accept him as Amirul Mu'mineen, as Khalifa. There is no dissent. There are no divisions. We are a united ummah. Alhamdulillah. And then during the time of his Khilafah, there were certain problems that arose, but not in connection with succession to leadership, not at all, concerning his administration of the affairs of the Ummah. It had nothing to do with succession to leadership, nothing. And then he was assassinated, Shaheed. And then came his successor, Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And yes, there were some voices of dissent, but they did not dissent over theory concerning succession to leadership, not at all. They were dissenting over another issue, unrelated to the theory of succession to leadership in Islam. And eventually the entire ummah submitted to him. And then there was schism, which led to civil war. And then Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu was killed, like Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And then the ummah in its wisdom chose his son, Sayyidina Imam Hassan radiallahu ta'ala anhu, not because of his family. No, if he was appointed as Khalifa because of his family, well, Abu Bakr Siddiq was not family, and Umar Farooq was not family, and Uthman Ghani radiallahu ta'ala anhum was not family. So if he was chosen as Khalifa, it had nothing to do with family. That theory cannot hold. But he, in his wisdom, because of the civil war which just took place, in his wisdom, and may Allah bless him for the wise decision that he took, to preserve the unity of the ummah, he chose to step down in favor of Amir Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. That was a wise decision. It preserved the unity of the Ummah for another 28 years. But it was when Amir Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu attempted to institute something which would have been a corruption of the true religion in enforcing the bay'ah in favor of his son Yazid, that the grandson of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam raised the standard of dissent. Sayyidina Imam Hosein radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a lion of a man. A lion of a man. And with great courage and matchless integrity, he stood up. He stood up against the corruption of the true religion. And he stood up against tyranny and oppression. And there's one from his family who is coming to complete the unfinished business that he was attending to. Eventually, the forces of tyranny and oppression, the forces of corruption of the true faith, surrounded him in Karbala. He didn't give up. He didn't compromise. He fought to the end, and all those who were with him fought to the end, and all became shuhada. We say tonight, no one in this gathering will dissent, and none who listen to this lecture in other lands will ever dissent. The Nabi Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam must be proud of his grandson. And that Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha must be proud of her grandson. And that Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu must be proud of his son. What more do you want? And that Fatima Zahra radiallahu ta'ala anha, the daughter of the Prophet and the mother of Imam Hosein, must be proud of her son. And this ummah, for 1400 years now, as we look back at that moment when he stood up to preserve the pure religion from corruption, when he stood up against tyranny and oppression, this ummah has been proud of him for 1400 years now. But there is unfinished business on that battlefield of Karbala. For those who bring monarchy, bring family rule, and bring something called a crown prince, there is some unfinished business on the battlefield of Karbala. And when Imam al-Mahdi comes, he's going to finish what was unfinished in Karbala, to bring back the true faith and to sweep into the garbage bin monarchy and family rule that the Ottomans brought. Monarchy and family rule that we have in the royal house of Saud in Saudi Arabia. Monarchy and family rule that we have in Qatar, and we have in Dubai, and we have all over the place, and we have in Jordan. It's going into the garbage bin because there's unfinished business left at Karbala. And so this ummah was proud that a movement emerged at Karbala with the assassination, with the martyrdom of Sayyidina Imam Hosein radiallahu ta'ala anhu, a movement emerged, a standard of revolt in opposition to counter-revolution, a standard of revolt to preserve the true faith from corruption, a standard of revolt that the head which bows in worship before Allah will not bow before tyranny and oppression. What a wonderful day that was. What a wonderful moment that was when this movement emerged. But then tragedy struck. This movement was never intended to disunite the Ummah. This was never intended to be a sectarian movement. No. It is my opinion, and when I give my opinion, you know, please never accept it. Never accept my opinion unless you are convinced that it is correct. It is my opinion that Dajjal is the mastermind who now corrupted this movement of dissent, this movement against counter-revolution. And this movement now got something called a doctrinal foundation and structure. A strange one. What is it? It said that the entire ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, without exception, were all misguided when they accepted Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu as Amir al-Mu'mineen. That's strange. And we're going to come back to that. That the entire ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam was mistaken and misguided when they accepted Abu Umar Farooq as Amir al-Mu'mineen radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and Uthman Ghani radiallahu ta'ala anhu as Amir al-Mu'mineen. This same movement of revolutionary dissent against corruption of the faith now tells us that no, it is Allah who decides who rules over this ummah. And in another word, that it is Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam who appointed in his lifetime, appointed his cousin as his successor, Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And so succession to rule in Islam is by divine order restricted to the family of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. Family rule. Family rule. Imam Hosein radiallahu ta'ala anhu stood up at Karbala against family rule. And the head which bowed in worship before Allah refused to bow before family rule. And so now we have the beginnings of a sectarian movement. The major matter which divides the Shia from the rest is this new doctrine that the succession to rule in Islam was divinely ordained, was communicated by the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, and was restricted to the family of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. When Imam Imam al-Mahdi comes, of course, then everything is going to be cleared up. And there will be no misunderstandings anymore. But even before he comes, it is possible for this lecture to address the subject. What is the truth? Those who chose to believe in this new doctrine, this strange new doctrine, that succession to rule in Islam is divinely ordained and was communicated by the Prophet ﷺ to be restricted to his family, they came to be known as Shia, because they now constituted the first sectarian movement. What a tragedy, what a tragedy. That this movement which stood up against corruption, stood up against tyranny and oppression with matchless courage and matchless integrity, should now be taken for a ride. What a tragedy. If this speaker is correct, and of course those who held to the position that the Ummah was correct when they appointed Abu Bakr Siddiq and Umar Farooq and Uthman Ghani as Khulafa, that they were correct, these now came to be known as Sunni. The term Sunni is used in this lecture to refer to those. This doesn't have any doctrinal beliefs in it here. This is the Ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, the united Ummah with no difference, none. Everybody hold on to this view. These are called Sunni now. So when we speak of the Shia, the Sunni, this is what we're talking about, this doctrinal division. If this speaker is correct, that the mastermind who took them for a ride was Dajjal, we now must ask the question, why did he do it? What is his scheme? What is his plan? And my answer is that his ultimate plan is to use this division in the Ummah to his advantage in Akhirulzaman, and that his plan is about to unfold. In fact, it is already unfolding. That his plan is to bring about civil war between Shia and Sunni. That's his plan. The Sunnis may not be aware of it, the Shia may not be aware of it, but I am aware of it. Why does he want to bring about civil war? Number one, at a time when the Zionists are waging war on Islam, particularly since 9/11, and they're doing it so that Dajjal may be able to move from stage 2 to stage 3. This book, Jerusalem in the Quran, explains the subject. Some of you have read the book. We have it in Bahasa as well. But don't tell me you bought it, said, but Sheikh, I didn't get the time to read it as yet. Because the events are unfolding now, which is there in this book 10 years ago. He wants to bring about a change in the rulership of the world. That the United States of America must be brought down, so that Israel will replace the United States as the next ruling state in the world. And so a day which is like a month will come to an end. If you find this language strange, it's because you've not read this book. And a day which is like a week will now commence. And during the time of a day like a week, the world which had experienced Pax Britannica and then Pax Americana, but of course there's no Pax, it's only deceit and war, will now experience Pax Judaica, the rule of Israel. In order for Israel to rule the world, and for Dajjal to eventually emerge in Jerusalem as a Jew, as a young man, powerfully built, with curly hair, meaning the curls coming down on the side, not curly hair on top, and standing up in Jerusalem and declaring, I am the Messiah, which is probably about 20-25 years from now. When I give opinion, I can be wrong, you know that. In order for Israel to rule the world, Israel has to rule over the Arabs. We spoke about that last night. And this booklet, where is it? Here we are. Medina returns to center stage in Akhirulzaman. This was my topic last night in Subang Jaya. And we have this book in Bahasa, and we have this book in Bahasa, outside. Israel has to impose its political and economic dominion over the Arabs as a preliminary to ruling over the world. Secondly, Israel has to impose her political and economic dominion over the Muslims, the entire world of Islam. And so Israel will have to wage war. We know for certain that one of the wars that Israel is going to wage is on Egypt. Oh yes. And when those fools with a capital F, I hope they're listening to me, made the alliance with the Zionist NATO to bring down Gaddafi, who was opposed to the Zionists, those absolute fools who said that they were Mujahideen, in bringing down Gaddafi with the help of NATO, now made Libya a NATO state. NATO is in charge, but they don't know it. Fools with a capital F. And so when the attack comes on Egypt, Egypt doesn't have a chance now. Because Israel will attack from the east, and NATO will attack from the west, and Egypt will be sandwiched in between. We know that's coming. We know that Israel wants to destroy Pakistan's nuclear plants and nuclear weapons and break up Pakistan. We know that. We know that Israel wants to attack Syria, bring about regime change in Syria so that Syria could become another Libya. And those fools who were so foolish in Libya are equally foolish or even more foolish in Syria. And I'm not talking about the Mujahideen in Syria who have no links with the Zionists, none, and who would rather die than take a penny from Saudi Arabia, who have no links with Saudi Arabia, no links with Qatar, no links with Jordan, nothing at all, and who are struggling in Syria. I am not speaking about them, not at all. I'm talking about these fools who say they're Mujahideen and who are in alliance with NATO to bring down this Syrian regime. These are the ones I'm talking about. We're expecting that since they've not succeeded so far, they're going to wage war on Syria. It is in this scenario that we now want to introduce how Dajjal is going to exploit the Sunni Shia division to his advantage in Akhirulzaman? The answer is, he wants to provoke Sunni Shia civil war. That's what he wants to provoke. If he can succeed in provoking Sunni Shia civil war in the world of Islam, what would be the benefit for him and for the Zionists? Number one, Islam is going to look terrible before the entire world on the stage of the world. Look at these Muslims at a time when they are back to the wall, fighting for their very lives. Look at how foolish the Muslims are, fighting amongst themselves. Islam is going to look so bad that whatever sentiment there may be in the world sympathetic towards Muslims, even that might be lost. And that will be tremendously advantageous to Israel and to the Zionists and to their propaganda war in CNN and Al Jazeera and the newspapers and the television sets. You can just imagine. They're going to have a field day laughing at the Muslims who are fighting amongst themselves at this time. Number two, Dajjal will consider it advantageous to provoke a Sunni Shia war, because such a war will weaken both the Sunni and the Shia at a time when Sunni and Shia should be trying to build maximum strength and power to resist Israel and to resist the Zionists. Thirdly, Sunni Shia civil war is going to break up Pakistan. There's no way that Pakistan can survive. They are the ones who planned 9/11. And one of the reasons why they planned 9/11 is to be able to get a base in Afghanistan from which to target Pakistan, to attack Pakistan, to destroy Pakistan's nuclear plants and nuclear weapons, and break up Pakistan into bits and pieces. They've not been able to do it for 10 years. Even though they had the presidency in their camp, a man named Pervez Musharraf, before he left, the Pakistanis were calling him Dog Musharraf. For 10 years, and this is to the credit of the Pakistani people, that they've not been able to do it as yet. They are actually waiting for civil war. The reason why they have all the drones killing the Pakistani people and even killing the Pakistani soldiers is because they were hoping to provoke civil war in the Pakistan armed forces. But it has not happened so far, because the Pakistanis knew what they wanted and were denied it. But if they succeed in provoking Shia Sunni civil war in the world of Islam, goodbye Pakistan. But there's a fourth reason why Dajjal would like to provoke Sunni Shia civil war. I'm going to restrict myself to these four reasons, but I'm sure tomorrow on YouTube you're going to see so many scholars intervening to give us a 6 and a 7 and an 8 and a 9 reason and so on. Iran is the Shia country par excellence. Well, 25 years ago, Iran experienced a spectacular Islamic revolution. I am a student of international relations, and in the language, in the terminology of international relations, we say that Islamic revolution in Iran was anti-systemic. And so the Zionists were very angry with the revolution in Iran. It not only threatened the Zionists, it also threatened the family kings and royal houses. Because the Islamic revolution in Iran denounced monarchies among the Arabs, denounced it. The Islamic revolution in Iran also had problems for the Soviet Union, who felt threatened. And as a consequence of the revolution in Iran, the Soviet Union intervened in Afghanistan in December 1979, if I am not wrong. The revolution in Iran has produced a government which has consistently for these last 25 years opposed the Zionists. That's not what they want. Dajjal doesn't want that. Sunni Shia civil war in Islam, in my opinion, is going to facilitate the effort for regime change in Iran. And so that a regime in Iran which is standing up against Israel and standing up against all the clients of Israel in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and what have you, would be removed. And a new regime would come which will be more authentically Shia, sectarian Shia, and with which Israel might be able to make a deal. That is the biggest advantage of all. Is it possible for us to do something to prevent Sunni Shia civil war in the world of Islam? The Ottomans have already contributed a lot. The Ottoman, you know, the monarchy, for 600 years, they waged war against the Shia. So Sunni Shia warfare to fan the flames of hatred. And today the drum beating is taking place. When I use the term Protestant Islam, by now you all know what I mean by Protestant Islam. A version of Islam with a methodology which says the religion is restricted to simply texts, the text of the Quran, the text of the Hadith, devoid of the spiritual heart, devoid of nur, devoid of firasatul mu'min, devoid of a capacity to see with the nur of Allah. That Protestant Islam declares that only Allah and His Messenger and the Aslaf have the authority to interpret the Quran and to interpret the Hadith. That's their position, and I'm not speaking derogatively about them. No. I'm not ridiculing them. No. I'm not disrespecting them. I'm not waging war on them. No. It is this Protestant Islam which is now beating the drums furiously against the Shia. Taken for a ride by Dajjal, who wants to foment Shia-Sunni civil war. And so wherever there is Protestant Islam anywhere in the world today, you find a people who are obsessed with beating the drums of war against the Shia. One of the ways that we can avoid Sunni Shia civil war is by calling a spade and telling them, you are foolish in what you're doing. You are playing, you are dancing to Dajjal's tune. The Zionists have been creating a Shia crescent by attacking Iraq and then bringing about regime change in Iraq with elections, while the Americans are in control of Iraq, and you have elections, and by some magic wand, abracadabra, that becomes halal. A halal government emerges in election, that's foolish. And now a Shia government replaces the Sunni government in Iraq. And we see the crescent being created by the Zionists to try to present to the world an image of Shia Islam on the ascendancy and Sunni Islam being encircled. This is not by accident. This is intended to facilitate the brainwashing that is necessary for a Sunni Shia civil war to take place. So we need not only to silence those people by calling a spade, the drum beaters, but we also need political analysis from the member. We need the ulama who will have the knowledge and the insight to be able to understand what is happening in the world of politics today, in order that the ulama might play a role in preventing Sunni Shia civil war from taking place. Because if it does take place, that's it. We will suffer, and suffer tremendously. What can we do to prevent Sunni Shia civil war in Islam, which is Dajjal's plan, and which, if it does occur, will bring catastrophe after catastrophe on this ummah. Pakistan won't survive. I said, number one, call a spade a spade. The same foolish behavior, same foolish conduct which led to Libya now becoming a Zionist state, the same foolish conduct which could lead to Syria becoming another Zionist state, that is the same foolish conduct which is now beating the drums of war against the Shia, Protestant Islam. Call a spade a spade. Let the Ummah call a spade as part of the effort to try to save this Ummah from civil war. I said there's a role for the ulama and the khatib from the mimbar, that the ulama must acquire that political knowledge and insight to understand what is happening in the world today. An alim is supposed to be someone outstanding. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ الْعُلَمَاءُ وَرَثَةُ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ. So the ulama, if they are ulama, must have political knowledge and political insight into what's happening in the world today. And they must stand up on the mimbar and explain to the people, so that as a result of what is taking place on the mimbar, we might be able to save the world of Islam from civil war. And finally, there is a role that every single Muslim must play. Wherever in the world you are, whatever the smallest effort that you can make, do make it to try to prevent that civil war from taking place. Now, let us turn to a more serious part of the subject. We said, but that's a strange view, isn't it? That the entire ummah, all Muslims, without a single exception, were all wrong, all misguided. when they appointed and accepted Abu Bakr as-Siddiq as Amirul Mu'mineen and Khalifa? What a strange belief! That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who appoints leadership. And Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam communicated the leadership is restricted to his family. And it commences with Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. How do we deal with this doctrinal division now? The Quran tells us, فَإِن تَنَعْزَاتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. If you are in a state of division, dissent on a certain matter, then take that matter before Allah and His Messenger for a resolution of the matter. Meaning, take it to the Quran. And only after you have taken it to the Quran, only then do you take it to the Prophet ﷺ, because the Quran comes first. The Quran is the word of Allah. So we say, in order to resolve, or to at least try to resolve this issue, and I know that there are many Shia who will be listening to this lecture, we say it must be taken to the Quran for resolution. And no hadith can be in conflict with the Quran. And if there's even the appearance of a conflict between what is in the Quran and what is in the hadith, it is the Quran which must prevail. What does the Quran say? We quote only 2 verses. It's enough. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a command in the Quran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have faith in Allah, ati' Allah, obey Allah, wa ati'ur Rasul, and obey the Messenger of Allah, wa ulil amri minkum, and obey those in authority from within your own ranks. So that excludes the Security Council of the United Nations. My teacher of blessed memory, Maulana Dr. Fadlur Rahman Ansari rahimahullah, commenting on this verse, he says, what Allah means is, obey those in lawfully constituted authority from amongst you. Lawfully constituted authority means constituted in accordance with Allah's law, not the law of the state. So obey Allah and obey His Messenger and obey those in authority from within your own ranks. That's all Allah says. That's all that Allah says. Where in this verse do we have the divinely appointed leadership? Where? Those in authority, how are they constituted? And how do they function? That's the question now. Is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appoints those who are to be in authority amongst you? In another verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains, He says, وَشَاوِرُهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَ بَيْنَهُمْ. That your affairs, ulil amri, your affairs are going to be conducted and determined on the basis of shura, not on the basis of a divine edict. No. And so the Quran is clear. The Quran is clear that there is no basis at all in the Quran for the belief that there is a divinely appointed leadership in Islam that is restricted to the family of the Prophet ﷺ. That is in conflict with the Quran. What then do we do with alleged ahadith in which the Prophet ﷺ is alleged to have appointed Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu as his successor? Our observation is that it is a massive vote of no confidence in the Prophet ﷺ. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ هَذَا. You're making him look as the worst possible leader that has ever been on the face of the earth. That he should declare, I have finished my work, I have completed my mission. And then as soon as he dies, every single Muslim disobeys him. Every single Muslim without exception, all of his companions disobey him by disregarding his alleged command that Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu must be my successor. It is clear that Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam never gave such a command, never gave such an appointment. Not only because of what is in the Quran, because it would have violated the Quran, but also because the Ummah spoke. Nobody knew about that command. And so it's a little bit late in the day to try to bring in a new doctrine which is not in conformity with the Quran and which would constitute a violent vote of no confidence in Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Before we end, there is another issue which stands between the Sunni and the Shia. And it is an issue which can unite the Sunni and the Shia. And that is the Sunni belief in the advent of Imam al-Mahdi. And the Shia most certainly believe in the advent of Imam al-Mahdi. We said to them some time ago that Imam al-Mahdi would not be a Shia, meaning would not be someone who holds on to this belief. The leadership in Islam is divinely ordained and is restricted to the family of the Prophet ﷺ. He will not be a Shia in that sense. But in another sense, he will be taking up what was left over in Karbala. Oh yes. And all the forces of oppression, and all the forces of tyranny, and all the forces of corruption of the faith, by bringing family rule and crown prince and king and so on, will all be running on that day, running for their life when Imam al-Mahdi comes. Because he's going to run them out of town. Oh yes. In that sense, Imam al-Mahdi would be in harmony with the movement that emerged from Karbala. The movement, the revolutionary movement that emerged from Karbala to restore the true faith and to protect the true faith from corruption and to stand up with matchless courage and integrity against oppression and tyranny. That Imam al-Mahdi will continue where Karbala left off. So tell them that for me in Riyadh. But Imam al-Mahdi would not be Shia in this sense, in believing that Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a usurper. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ هَذَا. And that Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a usurper. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ هَذَا. And that Uthman Ghani radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a usurper. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ هَذَا. If that is Shia, Imam al-Mahdi is not Shia. The hadith is that a Khalifa will die. And Khalifa does not stand for a rightly guided leader. Khalifa could be any leader. A Khalifa will die, and then there will be dissent concerning succession. My opinion, of course, it's a Saudi king who's going to die. And they have 5,000 Saudi princes all lining up to fight for succession. And while that dissension is taking place in respect of succession after that Khalifa dies, then this man is going to come out of Medina and hurry to Mecca. He will have to be someone well known. Of course, he's an Arab, not an Indonesian. He speaks Arabic, not Bahasa Indonesia. He's going to hurry to Mecca. And when he arrives in Mecca, the people of Mecca are going to come out to him to urge him and to force him to accept the bay'ah at the Kaaba. This is not your normal Saudi. No. This has to be those Saudis who recognize the corruption in the regime and whose hearts long for the true Islam that will stand up to the Zionists. Saudi Arabia is now a Zionist state, the American kingdom of Saudi Arabia. These people are going to come out to him to urge him and force him to accept the bay'ah. And he will accept the bay'ah at the Kaaba. I made the observation, and let me repeat it again, but say it slowly this time because some people don't hear properly. I said that Mecca has never been a Shia city. Did I say that there are no Shia in Saudi Arabia? Huh? I said Mecca has never been a Shia city. Is this true or is it false? I said that I do not anticipate Mecca becoming a Shia city. No. In the sense of Mecca accepting this doctrine that succession is divinely ordained and it is restricted to the family of the Prophet ﷺ. This doctrine we are talking about. I said that it is impossible for Mecca, which is not Shia, it is Sunni. Only in this doctrinal sense we are talking. For a Sunni Mecca to give the bay'ah to an Imam al-Mahdi who is Shia, that's not possible. This is a statement I have made. And it has been twisted in so many different ways it becomes strange to look at. I gave this as my part of my argument that Imam al-Mahdi would not be Shia. But when he declares himself to be the Imam al-Mahdi at the Kaaba, I know there are going to be lots of Sunnis who will reject him. Lots of Sunnis who reject him, declare he's a terrorist. Particularly the Sunnis living in the Zionist lands, you know, Saudi, United States of America and Canada and Britain and Europe and so on, and Australia and Singapore. He's a terrorist. There's another Osama bin Laden out there. So some Sunni will accept him and follow him. Some Sunni. This one will say, but he is not Deobandi, so I'm not going to follow him. That one will say, he's not going to be Brelvi, so I'm not going to be following him. That one will say, he's not this one and he's not that. All the sectarian movements in Islam will disown him. So who will follow Imam al-Mahdi on that day amongst the Sunnis? My view is very few. And then what will happen to the Shia? I believe that many Shia are going to reject him, Imam al-Mahdi. I believe that there are going to be Imam al-Mahdis around the corner before the real Imam comes. The Zionists have probably already crafted an Imam al-Mahdi. I heard there's one in Turkey. Let me not mention his name. Written a lot of books. So we're going to have a number of Imam al-Mahdis coming along the road. And it is only those with true knowledge and insight, only they will be able to recognize, nope, that's an impostor. That is not the true Imam. And I fear for the Shia, who I consider to be Muslims and therefore my brothers, that many of them are going to be taken for a ride by someone who's going to be an impostor coming along tomorrow and declaring, I'm Imam al-Mahdi. When will Imam al-Mahdi come? The answer is in Sahih Bukhari. Kayfa antum, said the Prophet ﷺ. What a wonderful time that would be. إِذَا نَزَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ نُ مَرْيَمْ, when the son of Mary will descend amongst you. وَإِمَامُكُمْ مِنْكُمْ, and at that time your Imam will not be George Bush in the White House, or Obama, or the Security Council of the United Nations, because the Imam has supreme authority. But your Imam will be minkum, meaning the Khilafah will be restored. Darul Islam will be restored. That is Imam al-Mahdi. And so the advent of Imam al-Mahdi, I'm going to use a big word now, the advent of Imam al-Mahdi is an event which will be contemporaneous, occurring at the same time, contemporaneous with the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. This one coming just before that one. How much time is there left before Nabi Isa alayhi salam comes? Do not attempt to answer that question unless you've done your homework and you've studied Ilmu Akhirulzaman. Many of my books outside that I've written are on this subject. Ilmu Akhirulzaman. It is the most important branch of knowledge in Islam today. And it is the one branch of knowledge which is not being taught. Ilmu Akhirulzaman. Please study that subject before you begin to make an estimate of how much time there is left. I always stick out my neck and give a figure. Even though I know they're going to come after me and say, you're God? Only God knows the future. No, I stick out my neck and I give a figure. Of course, always saying, I can be wrong, Allah knows best. In order to condition your minds about an approximate time frame. That's all I'm doing, an approximate time frame. By my understanding, we probably have about 25-30 years left before Nabi Isa alayhi salam would come down. Some of my students say to me, Sheikh Imran, you're wrong, it's much less than that. When Imam al-Mahdi comes, and he proclaims himself Mahdi at the Kaaba, I know at that time there will be amongst the Shia those who will accept him and follow him. And there will be amongst the Sunni those who will accept him and those who will follow him. And at that time we will not be Shia and Sunni anymore. we would have restored the united ummah that Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam left. And I want to end the lecture tonight by saying that if that is what is going to come tomorrow, you should make the effort from today. Don't consider all the Shia to be the same, and don't consider all the Sunni to be the same. There are those whose Qibla is in Washington. They don't have the same Qibla as we do. And there are also amongst the Shia those who have corrupted beliefs. But not all are the same. So do not allow your mind to be corrupted. And reach out amongst the Shia for those who will unite into one solidarity in fighting a common battle against a common enemy, with the prayer that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will unite us on that day when Imam al-Mahdi returns. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَتُبْ عَلَيْنَا يَا مَوْلَانَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ بِرَحْمَتِكَ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ Ameen. I am going to give you my view, but be warned that I can be wrong. I believe they have now reached that point where they realize that unless and until there is external intervention in Syria, they will not be able to bring down the regime. And so I think they are planning external military intervention. And they're going to put the ball in Russia's court. Russia knows that if the regime falls and a pro-Western regime comes into Syria, Russia will lose the naval port that she has. It's the only naval port that Russia has in the Mediterranean. And if Russia loses that port, that is a significant success for Israel. Will Russia wage war? Will Russia risk nuclear war? Will Russia risk Armageddon, or what the Prophet called Malhama, over Syria? My guess is that the Zionists have concluded that Russia will not do it, that they could take Russia's bluff. And so they're probably training Turkey now for the Turkish armed forces to intervene in Syria and to try to bring about a regime change in Syria by armed military intervention, not just an armed insurrection. If they ever succeed in bringing down the Syrian regime, guess what's going to happen? In Libya, what these fools who say that they're mujahideen did, and the Zionists did in Libya, is that Muammar Gaddafi had reached out with great compassion and kindness and wisdom to Black Africa, had reached out to help Black Africa, all the Black African countries. And so there were lots of Black Africans in Libya. And these Black Africans were in Libya because of the policies of the Libyan government. And there was an Arab-African unity that was being built because of the policies of the Libyan government. As soon as Gaddafi was overthrown, these insurrectionists began to hunt these Black Africans and kill them shamelessly. Shamelessly. So lots of Black Africans were killed mercilessly in Libya. What's going to happen in Syria? You have in Syria a sectarian movement called the Alawi, who some consider to be a breakaway movement from the Shia, some say no. But they are supposed to be a people who worship Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. If I'm wrong, please correct me. These are the people who the French put to rule over Syria. The French put them there. And they have ruled over Syria for these last 40 years. And their rule was one of undisguised oppression and tyranny against the majority Sunni Muslims. So this has been a bloody dictatorship. It has no religious credentials. It has no moral credentials to rule over the Muslims. The only credentials that it has is that it has stood up against the Zionists, that's all, like Libya. So if this regime is overthrown, you're going to have a bloodbath in Syria. And the Alawi are going to be slaughtered. The Zionist-funded mercenary mujahideen, so-called mujahideen, are going to slaughter the Alawi. And if the Shia consider the Alawi to be Shia, that could be the start of the Sunni Shia civil war. I believe that this is what is going to happen. I hope and pray it does not happen, but I believe this is what is going to happen in the near future, within the next few months. Any other questions? Comment is very perceptive here. The Iranian government is a Shia government. But when Imam Khomeini, rahimahullah, succeeded in the revolution in Iran, Imam Khomeini reached out to the leadership of the Sunni world. He wrote, for example, a letter to Maulana Maududi, rahimahullah, in Pakistan, seeking to build a bridge of Shia-Sunni unity. That was Imam Khomeini, rahimahullah. So the revolution that came to Iran was not a sectarian Shia revolution. It was more of an Islamic revolution than it was a Shia revolution. And this government in Iran, that the Protestant Muslims are now beating the drums furiously for war on Iran, this government has established or is establishing an alliance with Russia. Personally, I am heartbroken, because although I believe that the prophecy of Nabi Muhammad ﷺ will be fulfilled and Muslims will make an alliance with Rome, I think it is now too late for us to ever change their hearts and build back love and friendship. No. So it will be an alliance of convenience. But the hatred for Islam and the hatred for Muslims in Eastern Europe and in Russia, because of 600 years of Ottoman Islamic butchery, that hatred is so great that I don't think it can be changed now. I feel sad to say so. There is a lecture coming up on alliance with Rome. But it is to Iran's credit that Iran is establishing an alliance with Rome. It is to Pakistan's credit that the people of Pakistan have put sufficient pressure on the government and the armed forces, who every Sunday morning like to fly first class to Washington, that now Pakistan, late in the day, is now attempting to build closer ties with Russia. This is something positive. Why is the rest of the world of Islam wedded to the Anglo-American alliance? Why are they all friends of Washington and scared of Russia and the alliance with Rome? Part of the reason for this is because the strategy of the Zionists has always been to take control of those who rule over us and to take control of those who control their armed forces. And they brainwash these people. They're educated in Washington and London. They're educated in military affairs in Sandhurst. And then these people go back home to become rulers over the Muslims. And so they are carbon copies of the European masters, and yet they rule over us. And this is the reason, not because the Muslims have lost their heart and lost their capacity to think, but those who rule over them are people who do not represent them. This is a Sunni tragedy. What is my response to the modernization of the holy city of Mecca? That now in Mecca you have Starbucks, you have McDonald's, you have Kentucky Fried, you have very expensive hotels, you have Jewish Tinked, what is that? I don't know. This is the presence of Dajjal in Mecca. But the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that neither Dajjal nor plague meaning epidemics, can ever enter Mecca or Medina. This booklet has that in it. It is when Dajjal appears, the khuruj of Dajjal takes place. The khuruj of Dajjal is different from the release of Dajjal. Dajjal was released in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. But the khuruj of Dajjal takes place after the Malhama, or the big war, which will make the First World War and the Second World War look like peanuts. Malhama. After the Malhama, then you have the khuruj of Dajjal. He will appear in human form. He'll be a young man, powerfully built, curly hair, mean curls at the side and so on, ruling the world from Jerusalem. But prior to the khuruj of Dajjal, Dajjal is released. And he is in Mecca, he's in Medina, he's in every city, everywhere. And there is a hadith which anticipates this. Dajjal is in Mecca. Dajjal is responsible for all this corruption of Mecca. What is the hadith? The Prophet ﷺ was asleep, and in his sleep he had a vision. And in his vision he saw people going around the Kaaba making tawaf. And he saw a man with men on both sides supporting him, and with his hair as though water was dripping from it. And he asks, who is that? And in the vision he was told, this is Nabi Isa alayhi salam. And then he saw another man making tawaf, and he also had people with him. And he asked, who is that making tawaf around the Kaaba? And he was told, that is Al-Masih al-Dajjal. I believe that is the fulfillment of the vision of the Prophet ﷺ, that we today see Mecca with all the signs of Dajjal all over it. What is the substance of the division between the Shia and the Sunni. I have explained with clarity and to some extent with detail. I have explained and I have put before you the substance of the division. The substance of the division is the wrong, misguided doctrine that leadership is divinely appointed in Islam and leadership is restricted to the family of the Prophet ﷺ. I don't need, and you don't need to go beyond that. You have the substance of the subject there. I'm disappointed that you want to find out more than that. What should the Syrian people do? Should they support the uprising against the government? Should they support the government? What is the answer in the context of Islamic teaching? I already answered this question in several interviews on YouTube. If you support the uprising, the armed it's not an uprising, it's an armed insurrection, armed and funded by Saudi Arabia and Turkey and Qatar shamelessly. If you support the armed insurrection, tomorrow you're going to have a Zionist state of Syria. If that's what you want, then go ahead. But I don't think the Syrian people want that. Not at all. Do you support the government? I just said, the Syrian government has no moral authority. None. It has no religious authority. None. It has been a government which has been oppressive and tyrannical. I said all of these things. But to its credit, the Syrian government has opposed the Zionists. What do you do? I said, if you had proper leadership, the Sunni majority, if you had proper leadership, and if you were a united community, you would send a delegation that is representative of the Syrian Sunni people. Send that delegation to Moscow, meet with Putin, and give Putin the assurance that if the Russians ease the regime change to bring down this regime and replace it with another one that will be Sunni, that the Sunni government that will replace Bashar Assad will be just as opposed to the Zionists as he was. That this new government in Syria will maintain its alliance with Russia. That the Russian naval base will remain. If you do that, Russia is the only country which can intervene and persuade the Syrian regime to step down. And a new government will come to Syria which will be representative of the majority Sunni Muslims. But do you think Saudi Arabia wants that? You think Qatar wants that? You think this misguided so-called Islamic government in Turkey wants that? You think the Zionists wants that? Oh, not at all. What they want is another Libya. Can you please elaborate on the hadith regarding the army that will come from Khorasan with black flags? That army is the authentic Islamic resistance to oppression in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is the heart of Khorasan. That army has already started, and that army has displayed over the last 10 years a capacity to fight NATO, and NATO cannot defeat them for 10 years. It is only when Dajjal is killed and Gog and Magog are destroyed. Very few people know anything about Gog and Magog. They say, well, is that a restaurant somewhere? Gog and Magog? Like Masakan Padang, Masakan Gog and Magog? I have a book outside, took me a long time to write it, An Islamic View of Gog and Magog in the Modern World. I pray somebody will help me to translate it to Bahasa, inshallah. An Islamic View of Gog and Magog is outside. When Dajjal is killed and Gog and Magog are destroyed, after the Malhama takes place, electronic warfare is not possible. No. Your cell phones ain't going to work anymore. No, you probably won't have electricity after that. No. So it's going to be conventional warfare as before with horses. It is at that time the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that the army will now be unstoppable from Khorasan, marching in a straight line, liberating every territory in a straight line until it reaches Elia, the Roman name for Jerusalem. And at that time, when they reach Elia, then said the Prophet ﷺ, لَتُقَاتِلُنَّ الْيَهُودِ, the hadith is in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, you will most certainly fight the Jews. Not all Jews. No, that's lazy scholarship. We don't want lazy scholars. No, not all Jews. لَتُقَاتِلُنَّ الْيَهُودِ, you will most certainly fight the Jews. Which Jews? The Jews who are oppressors. Not the Jews who are standing with us and resisting oppression. There's a Jewish scholar in London who's been interviewing me on Skype. He's Jewish. لَتُقَاتِلُنَّ الْيَهُودِ وَلَتَقْتُلُنَّهِمْ, and you will defeat them. حَتَّى يَقُولُ الْحَجَرَ, at that time even the stones will speak. Ya Muslim, هَذَا يَهُودِيٌّ وَرَائِي, there's a Jew hiding behind me. فَتَعَالَ فَقْتُلْ, so come and kill him. This is the army that will come from Khorasan. I don't think there are going to be any men in that army. Now don't be annoyed with me. If you're annoyed, at least be good friends after the lecture is over, okay? I don't think there are going to be any mujahideen in that army without beards. No. I think every single one of them in that army will have a beard. And I'm not talking about the Saudi apology for a beard. No, I'm talking about a beard which is the Sunnah, that beard. I don't think anybody in that army is going to be wearing black suits and bow ties. No, that army is going to be comprised of people wearing ethnic clothing. Ethnic clothing. You know, sometimes in KL, I'm the only one wearing a sarong. Yeah. So I asked, where are the Malay? Nobody is wearing a sarong. That army will have people wearing ethnic clothing. I don't think they'll be eating with knife and fork. No, that army will come from Khorasan, who will be eating the Sunnah way. Allah gave us knife and fork here. But mashallah, the Malay like to eat with their fingers. I'd like to ask you pertaining the Illuminati, is it existing? Have you given any thought regarding Israel's Zionist agenda? Is it the same thing as two different things? Are these the two movement forces, rival of Dajjal? I am not an expert in the field of the occult and the secret movements, the Illuminati and Freemasonry and so on. But we have a seminar which has been organized for the 1st of September and for the 2nd of September. I think there's a flyer outside, please get it. On September the 1st, I will lead a seminar on an introduction to Islamic eschatology, all-day seminar. But on September 2nd, Dr. Omar Zaid, who is the expert in that field, he will lead the seminar on the occult, Illuminati, Freemasonry, etc. So do please come and attend that seminar. Why do you choose Malaysia to propagate the knowledge of Akhirulzaman compared to other places? Do you see any significance in this country in the events? Well, first of all, I have been visiting Malaysia for the last 22 years. And in these 22 years, the Malaysian people have reached out to me and have supported me on every single turn. So many of them have become my students. I always publish or print my books in Malaysia. I could print them cheaper in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Indonesia, in China, cheaper. But I have chosen to print my books in Malaysia even though it's more expensive, because of the quality of the work I get and because the people who are helping me are all here in Malaysia. Can you explain the importance of Al-Ihsan knowledge for the subject of Akhirulzaman? There's a lecture of mine delivered last week, I believe, on Khidir alayhi salam and Akhirulzaman. So the answer to your question is in that lecture. You get it on YouTube, in the internet, on my website. Khidir alayhi salam and Akhirulzaman. Since there are no more questions, ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك ربنا وتعاليت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وعلى أصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين.
ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي توبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم إلهي لست للفردوس أعلى ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي توبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم Tuhanku, aku tidak layak untuk syurgamu, tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa nerakamu. Dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku, ampunkanlah dosaku. Sesungguhnya Engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar. Tuhanku, aku tidak layak untuk syurgamu, tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa nerakamu. Dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku, ampunkanlah dosaku. Sesungguhnya Engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar. Ilah